So all of these are viable options, some more than others. But there's another option. And it's the one that if Tony Khan really wants to get people talking and really wants to capitalize on all of the buzz from this week, instead of the Summer of Punk, he will give us the Summer of MJF. MJF lost to Wardlow last Sunday at Double or Nothing. There was a lot of controversy coming into that show because he had no-showed a FanFest signing on Saturday. Nobody could get a hold of him. There was a supposed flight back to New Jersey that was booked that people thought he was going to get on the flight and no-show the pay-per-view. That ended up not happening. He showed up, he did business, and he went out on a stretcher. He comes out on television on Wednesday. Now, in a perfect world, he wouldn't have been on television on Wednesday. He wouldn't be on television for at least a month, licking his wounds after the loss. 10 power bombs at the hands of Wardlow. That was the one negative about the MJF stuff on the show on Wednesday, is that he walked out there, he made one passing comment about how he was still in a lot of pain. But after he said that, you would look at him, you would listen to him, you would never know it. You would never know that he was in pain. You would never know that he got powerbombed 10 fucking times by Wardlow at Double or Nothing and went out on a stretcher, even though they put the oxygen mask over his fucking eyes. They did a stretcher job, and then boom, he was right back on TV on Wednesday. That was not good. But he came out and he said, I'm not here tonight to talk to you people as MJF. I'm here to talk to you as Max Friedman. And he mentioned that all the Warner and Discovery executives that were in the building, because they threw a big party when the show was over at the Forum on Wednesday for AEW, big mixer. He said, boy, it'd be a real shame if something bad happened here tonight with all these executives watching. He said when AEW started, it was all friends wrestling, but not for him, right? Nobody knew who he was. He had to earn his way to the top. He had to earn people's respect. He said everything he touches turns to gold. When he comes out every week, he's not expected to hit home runs. He's expected to hit grand slams, and he does it. Other wrestlers settle for being great. He has to be perfect. He's 26 years old. He says he's the only guy who's capable of carrying this company on his back, is me. He said, it's funny that I hear clapping mixed in with the boos that he was getting from the crowd. He goes, where were all you people when I was being called an unprofessional piece of shit this weekend? And all the boys in the back, they want my spot. Well, you know what? They can have it because I don't want to be here anymore. And then he turned his ire to the fans and called them uneducated marks. And the fans don't know shit. He called himself a generational talent and said that we all take him for granted, but it's not just us, it's the big man in the back. He said he's the biggest minute-by-minute draw that this company has. He goes, if you don't believe me, Stat Boy Tony, he'll tell you. He said Tony Khan hoards all this money just to bring in all these ex-WWE guys, and the fans cheered, and he asked the boss, he goes, hey, maybe you would treat me better if I were a former WWE guy. And he said the problem with Tony Khan is that he has a position of power when the only position that he should be assuming is behind the guardrail with all the marks. He said, I don't want to wait until 2024. He stared right into the camera. He said, Tony, I want you to fire me. And then they censored him, calling Tony Khan a fucking mark before they cut his mic off and they cut to commercial. So now we're left, wondering, hey, was it all work from the very beginning? Was the whole thing from start to finish? And when I say from the start to finish, I'm talking going back months. When these reports first surfaced of there being some unrest and MJF being very frustrated. And the stuff with the interview he gave to Ariel Helwani that supposedly they were upset he didn't clear it with their PR team. Was everything just a work from day one? I don't believe so. I believe they've taken a real situation that was probably played up, bigger maybe than it was, but some real frustrations that I'm sure he had, and they've turned it into a storyline, which is what led to what we saw on Wednesday. The best promos are the ones that blend reality and fiction and play off real emotion. There was a lot of what came out of his mouth on Wednesday that I'm sure he believes, especially when it comes to the ex-WWE guys that Tony Khan's been bringing in and throwing a lot of money at. that in some cases don't do the kind of numbers on TV that MJF segments do. You take that real emotion, you blend it in with, the storyline, whatever the storyline is, and what you end up with is what we had on Wednesday. This was MJF's pipe bomb moment. And I thought he knocked it out of the fucking park. That is a promo segment that we are going to remember and be talking about for a very long time. And it could be a turning point. It should be a turning point for him in his career, much the way that the pipe bomb in Vegas was for Punk back in 2011. Similar situation. CM Punk, 1 foot out the door, contract about to expire, unlike MJF, who's got, 18 months left on his. He's ready to head out the door. He sees the writing on the wall. He knows it's probably not going to get any better for him. He's frustrated. He's able to go out there in a worked shoot and vocalize that and use that to build up his match with John Cena. It ended up turning him into the biggest star in wrestling. He was white hot that summer. It ended up as the champion. When this segment was over, since then, his merch has been pulled from Shop AEW. He has been removed from the AEW roster page. They've taken him out of the show intros for Dynamite and Rampage. I mean, they're making all these little moves now that they're really leaning into it, and they're really trying to make people convinced that, you know what, this guy, he's not fired, but yeah, he's like in Sasha and Naomi territory right now. He's suspended. He is not to be spoken of. It's like he doesn't even exist. Then this situation develops with CM Punk getting hurt, and they want to crown an interim champion. This all happens to just take place at the same time. The timing for Punk is awful, but the timing for this, for MJF, could not be any better. We talked about the Battle Royal and all the possibilities from Danielson to Miro to Wardlow to Kingston. What about MJF? What about MJF? MJF is not going to come out there and be a regular part of the Battle Royal. MJF is not going to come out there and get music and get an entrance. What if MJF, in his street clothes, comes out at the end of that Battle Royal, dumps out whoever the last 1 or 2 people are, sneaks in and wins the Battle Royal? He is technically still under contract to AEW. He is still employed. He is not fired. What if he sneaks in and wins the Battle Royal? Then he goes on to beat Jon Moxley, because there's nothing Tony Khan can do about it, right? He won the Battle Royal fair and square. He gets his match with Moxley. He wins, possibly with some help from Jericho's crew, because they're still feuding with, Regal's group. So maybe it isn't clean, but he beats Moxley. MJF gets the match with Hiroshi Tanahashi at Forbidden Door, which would be perfect, because he has been talking openly about how he doesn't like New Japan. I don't watch it. It's not really for me. I'm not a fan of the product. In that interview he did with Ariel Helwani a few months ago, he said, I'm not a fan of the product, but, if I had to pick a favorite of mine in New Japan, I would go with the Great Okan. The guy knows how to get fucking heat. When you think Great Okan is the best thing New Japan has to offer, fuck you. He knows what he's doing. So there's already a little built-in side story of him not liking and not respecting New Japan and people like Tanahashi. Imagine, you're thinking Great Okan is better than Hiroshi Tanahashi. So it works. And look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with putting the belt on Jon Moxley. He's one of their biggest stars. People love him. He's been champion before. He's always a reliable hand. He was with WWE. There's a period of time there he was like the Iron Man in WWE. Other people, other members of the Shield, they went down with injuries, and there was Mox. Okay, he's always been that guy. But the thing with that is, it's been done before. He's already been AEW champion. This is a chance for Tony Khan to do something that has not been done before. What better way for MJF to stick it to Tony Khan and give him a nice big fuck you than going on to become the interim AEW World Champion? He can hold the title hostage, basically, until Punk returns. It'll make all of his segments on television must-see, and the champion, the current interim champion, would be the biggest star on the show and the most interesting part of the show. Which is something that really, I think, Hangman Page suffered a great deal from. I'm not as down on Hangman Page and his run, looking back on it, as AEW champion as some people are. I think he had some great matches. I think his promos improved there towards the end. But in terms of his positioning on the show. He was not the most important player on the show, and he was the champion. And that should never happen. So no, he did not have the greatest run as champion. You wouldn't have that issue here with MJF. He'd be the hottest thing on the show. And it would put him on a collision course with CM Punk. Champion against champion when Punk comes back. It could be a role reversal from 2011 with MJF as the rebellious one this time, threatening to take the title anywhere he wants to. With Punk in the old John Cena role. But they don't have to copy exactly what WWE did. This doesn't have to be them copying WWE. We could end up with Punk as the heel at the end of all this. There are some very interesting roads to potentially go down here. But in 1 week, they have turned MJF into the most talked about thing in wrestling. Now is the time to lean into that and not put him on the back burner, even if it interrupts whatever plan they had for this. Injuries happen. Plans change. You need to be able to adjust. Tony Khan needs to read the room and see that there is money to be made here. And this isn't an ex-WWE guy that we're talking about. This is one of the young pillars of his company. The timing could not be any better. Moxley might be the safest, most predictable choice, but MJF is the best choice.